Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for the Crackpot Quail, released in 1941. It's the 317th in the series and is directed by Tex Avery. With this short on physical media, it's kind of interesting because there was a restoration done for streaming that included the revised audio, which I'll get into in a moment, but it's been released on the Tex Avery Volume 3 Blu-ray set as a bonus cartoon because they found the original audio, which again, I'll get into in just a moment. Now, in case you haven't seen this one, it is under copyright, so I can't show you the full thing here on YouTube, otherwise the video will just get taken down, but you've got Willoughby the dog. He's inspired by a poster and decides he's going to go and hunt a quail. He hears something, we see our quail, and the rest of the short is Willoughby just going after the quail and the quail messing with him, so nothing too deep story-wise here. In terms of trivia, so as I've already pointed out, there's actually two versions of this. So essentially the original version of this short included the quail doing razzing sounds, or I guess farting noises, if you want to put it another way. But due to the very strict censorship code at the time, aka the Hays Code, they had rules against that kind of thing, and they ordered it to be changed, and the version that ended up being released is the whistle version that most of you will be more aware of. As to which version's funnier, of course, that's going to be up for debate, and I have posted a video on my Facebook to sort of gauge which version people prefer, and it seems to be somewhat evenly split. I mean, maybe nostalgia might play a part of the whistling one, I don't know, but that doesn't change the fact that it originally started with the razzing sound, and then it was replaced. Tex Avery would get fired later on in the year due to the heckling hair, but before that, certain events had happened which no doubt would have annoyed Leon Schlesinger. It's been theorized if you go to the shorts before that, so this one and Hollywood Steps Out, where Avery pushed certain boundaries and then had pushed back against him, some have said that this was like a chain of events that just led to his firing. Whether that's true or not, well, it's one of those things that's lost to history, but I think there's some element of truth there because it feels like the heckling hair was a case of the last straw for Schlesinger, where he thought Avery went too far and ended up firing him and cutting that now lost third ending. In any case, we've also got the second appearance of Willoughby, so if you watch the review of Fox and Hounds, I go into the whole history of Mice and Men, how Willoughby is based off of Lenny from that story, but here he's had a bit of a redesign. I'm going to assume it's the same dog because in both of Fox and Hounds and this short is voiced by Tex Avery himself. Definitely think that it's the same dog, just redesigned. And I'm glad because when you watch this short, I love the animation in this, and I'm going to point out a few things as we go along. So Willoughby will then appear one more time in the heckling hair, the short I've already mentioned, although in that one he's voiced by Kent Rogers. And in watching this short, you'll notice that the quail definitely comes across like Bugs Bunny. And Avery was someone who didn't really care for starring characters, he just wanted to make funny cartoons, he didn't really care otherwise. But Bugs Bunny was such a huge hit, something I don't even think Avery was expecting, and so after this, Avery would direct a few more Bugs Bunny shorts, but in the meantime, he's done a Fox and Hounds, where the fox is essentially a Bugs Bunny character, like a smart aleck. Here, he's got a quail character, who sounds like a smart aleck and even does a few things that Bugs Bunny did in Wild Hare. Was this Avery's way of proving that it doesn't really matter so much about the character as long as it's funny? I don't know, but the end result, this quail character, not particularly great. I mean, it's cute and all, but it's not a design that pops out, whereas Bugs Bunny, one of the reasons that worked, aside from the attitude of the character, is that the design is so appealing, and it just caught on. In fact, the only thing that's really different from Bugs Bunny and the Quail in terms of character in this short is the whole thing on top of the quail's head. I believe this is a play on the California quail, aka their state bird, which I've since learned. I didn't know that before, I'm not American after all. But they would have that thing on top that's called a plume, or some have called it a top knot. And it's a lot bigger on the actual male species as well. So who says cartoons aren't educational? I've gone back and learned about quails. How about that? But seeing pictures of other species of quail, now, it looks like this is more closer to a California quail. And it makes sense. This short was made in California after all. But what we're going to do is go through this short from start to finish and go through my observations in relation to it, because there's a lot to like about it, despite the fact that, yeah, this Quail character isn't exactly great. But thankfully the Willoughby character is. I love the look of the Quail in the actual opening titles, how detailed it is. Granted, you're not going to have that level of detail in the short itself, but it's a nice little painting. I like that. And speaking of painting, we open up with this serious-looking dog ready for the hunt. Now, I'm not sure if Barco dog food is based on any real brand around. I think it was just a simple thing like, oh yeah, we just need to make a dog food brand. That's a bit of a pun, so Barco dog food. But if it is based off a real brand, definitely let me know. But it's a beautiful painting there, definitely done in the style that you would have seen at the time, especially in a lot of magazines when they're promoting certain products. So we see Willoughby, he's looking on, and the animation of Willoughby is probably my favorite bit in this. It's as though they took what Disney did with Pluto and then turned it up a notch. There's just so much personality in Willoughby that even if you watch this without Avery's vocals, it's still such an amazing thing to see. So in the beginning, Willoughby's looking on, he says,
"Oh boy, that's the life. I'm gonna be a pointer and catch me a quail. And a wheel too."
Breaking the fourth wall. Again, look at the expression of Willoughby as he breaks the fourth wall. Again, this short is full of it, and it's really fantastic. In fact, the designs in this short would be something that when Avery goes over to MGM, the first few shorts he would do there, he would use some of this type of design over there. And in the first of our running gag that will have a payoff at the end, Willoughby takes off. Beautiful running animation, but we continue to pan past, and we think, where's Willoughby? Well, where's he gone? And he smashed into a tree.
Tree.
I do wonder if the idea here came from a Fox and Hounds, because there is a line there that Willoughby mentions about it, knowing every tree in the forest, and here he literally hits every tree in the forest as we go along. But we hear something in the background, and again, all of us growing up would have heard the whistling sound, but I'm using for this review the razzing sound because that was the original intent. Whether you like this version or the whistling version, I'm just going with the original version here. And we got a whole scene of this quail trying to keep this plume out of his face and making a whole bunch of hairstyles, as you can see here. But I would argue that this scene maybe goes on a little bit too long. I mean, it's cute and all, but it just goes on for a long period of time. Although I like the expression where he thinks he's successful, but the plume ends up going down and hitting him in the face. In fact, one of the hairstyles even reminds me of the hairstyle Popeye gave Bluto in Clean Shaven Man, you know. But anyway, he appears to be successful, and then we see Willoughby approaching the quail. And again, wonderful animation on Willoughby. But as Willoughby approaches, the quail's plume falls down again. So we got the usual, hey, have you seen a quail? You know what to expect, right? But the animation of Willoughby doing the raspberry. Now, in the whistling version, Willoughby just does that spitting sound as though he's actually doing a raspberry sound, but they just added the whistle in there. But we then hear the quail doing the normal quail noise, and of course he has to shape out the perfect woman physique and do the wolf whistle, because of course he does.
Nope, I didn't. Doc, been around here for 20 years. Never heard a noise like that before. Nope, I didn't. Doc, been around here for 20 years. Never heard a noise like that before. A quail goes like this.
But then look at Willoughby's face when he's looking all skeptical. He may not be the brightest dog ever, but you got to give him credit. At least he's skeptical enough. And again, a lot of this reminds me of what Disney were doing with Pluto when it came to dog animation.
Say, wait a minute. You're a quail.
And we get a repeat of the sort of thing you saw in A Wild Hare.
Confidentially, I am a rabbit! He's a card, ain't he? You know, Doc, you're right!
Complete with the shouting through the ear, where we even see it makes out the other ear as well. He messes with Willoughby's nose and just ballets out of there. Again, aside from the jokes when it comes to the quail's plume, you could easily replace this character with Bugs Bunny and just have Willoughby out hunting for a rabbit and that's that. Heck, that's what they did in the heckling hair, but that's okay. We see the next part of our little running joke where he hits a tree, always breaking the fourth wall, acknowledging it.
Another tree.
But then we get a wonderful little chase scene. It's just on one background, nothing else, and we see Willoughby chasing after the quail. And the legs on Willoughby are just stylized. It's done so well. In fact, on top of all of that, while Carl Starling uses a lot of music cues in this short, here is just him doing various noises just to accentuate the action, and that's something that Avery would end up doing more and more of, especially when he goes over to MGM. We see Willoughby entering a log, and Avery would revisit in All This and Rabbit Stew when you have the log gag at the end, but we see that the quail is just there to torment Willoughby and just runs off.
Good morning, neighbor.
Good morning. That was the quail.
Really? But again, Willoughby's just so charming in this one. I just love those little moments. And again, he takes off and smacks into a tree and points out that, yep, it's another tree. So you know he's building up to something in relation to that. So next up we have Willoughby. He's on the trail when it comes to the quail. We see a beautiful moment, one of which if you slow-mo, it looks really bizarre, where Willoughby's nose just expands out to cover the two tracks which somehow separate like that. And they even end up going in the water, where we see the quail pretending to be a fish. So the song you hear here is The Umbrella Man, and you would have heard it many times. Carl Starling uses it very often, but it definitely suits the scene here. It almost becomes like the quail's theme in a way. And I like how in the next shot, the plume is its own character, essentially. It's going around like it's a periscope on a submarine, and it even turns into a question mark for a brief moment. The quail gets out, and we get, of course, another joke when it comes to the plume. So the chase continues, but we end up at a dead end where the quail looks like he's trapped. But now the next scene, though, the animation of Willoughby, again, it's some of the most perfect dog animation I've seen. The quail picks up the stick, and the dog's acting all excitable. Ooh, throw the stick, you know, acting like any regular dog.
Here, Rover, a stick. Here, go get it, quick, bring it back, go get the stick, quick, bring it back.
The stick is thrown, and again, the run cycle, and just the pure joy and excitement of Willoughby just picking up that stick and just acting like a normal dog. Again, wonderful animation. But as he's walking along, just his face when he comes to realization that he's been had, he could have caught this quail, and we get the close-up of his face just crunching that stick. It actually kind of reminds me of the dog in An Inch in Time, where we see him getting very frustrated with that flea. Definitely comes across like that, but after he gets angry, well, he smacks into yet another tree. You just know that there's going to be something to it. And we see the speed just pick up, and we see a much more exaggerated run cycle for Willoughby as we hear Avery just going,
Ruff! Ruff! That means I'm getting plenty sore.
and the speed picks up, essentially turns into a missile of sorts with all the dry brush effects showcasing speed. The quail hides behind the tree. We don't see him ever again. As we pan, and we just see all of this resulting damage from Willoughby smashing through someone's garden, their log house. He was even so strong to knock out a metal stove, and those things aren't exactly light. I love how the trail of destruction just goes on and on and on and on. And we see all the trees down. He just points out, yep, lots of trees. So there's our payoff. Whether you think it's effective or not is another thing entirely, but I like it. Again, I think Willoughby's such a cute character. And we even get a little payoff where you got the quail frustrated with his plume. You got Willoughby frustrated with his ear falling on his face, just like the plume did on the quail. And we end right there. So the short is not exactly the most remarkable thing Avery's ever done. But is it the worst thing he's done? No. This is actually entertaining, and I think a lot of what's enjoyable about this one is Willoughby himself. Not just the character, but the vocals by Tex Avery and the animation, along with the fact he's been redesigned here, and I really prefer the redesign. That's not to say his design of Fox and Hounds is terrible or anything, but here, I feel like the redesign allowed the animators to make Willoughby a lot more expressive, especially in those shots where he's acting like a dog, he's acting all quizzical, or when he's fetching the stick, and all the while, yeah, it's just a charming character. Unfortunately, the quail, he looks cute, yes, but there's really not much to him. Again, Bugs Bunny had made such a big impact. This is really Bugs Bunny in the quail suit, and the only difference between the two is the plume, and you just get a few jokes with that. If you cut out the plume jokes and make it that Willoughby was hunting a rabbit, you could have had Bugs Bunny in here, no problem. I mean, the quail even says, "Hey Doc," which is what Tex Avery himself was known for saying. But again, doesn't make it bad, not really. Look, this one gets 7.5 out of 10. It's an interesting short that's one of the last few that Avery did for Schlesinger's before getting fired. And we then see him over at MGM, and it's interesting seeing shorts at this stage and how a lot of that would end up carrying over to his work over at MGM. Let me know in the comments below, do you prefer the whistling version or the Raz version? And I've shown you a few examples in this review, so at least you can compare things. But let me know in the comments, but that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.
Lots of trees.